Hello, Sharif here. And today we want to talk about episode number 3 of our 5 series here. And I have to say that this is a recording, it's not the live stream. It's at the live stream time and place, but this is recording. I have another matter I need to take care of this evening, and I'm substituting with this recording. Therefore, there won't be any informal discussion after this because I won't be here. Um, I intend to be live on Thursday and Friday, so we'll end the series with the live stream. Today, we're talking about fantasy, reality, and vision, and I want to focus in on them and start honing them down so that we can start understanding some of the reasons why the things we need in our lives to change aren't changing, why we're up against the issues, the challenges, and the barriers that we're facing right now, and also to start looking at ways that each one of us and ways that we together can start changing how we um, interact with our world and actually how we understand our world. um, as many of you know, I read an awful lot of science fiction. Most of the science fiction writers are the ones that actually have been thinking about how our world changes, what's going on, and what are some of the things that we can predict about our future. So one of the things, one of my favorite science fiction writers is a guy named Philip K. Dick, and he wrote a lot of the books and short stories that became key and pivotal in our understanding of our future. Um, the ones that are the one that comes to mind the first is the story that became Blade Runner. Um, and the short story was, "Do androids dream of electric sheep?" Um, but Philip K. Dick said something that I think is very pertinent to us and pertinent to our discussion today. He said, "Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away." So if your belief is key to the maintenance of whatever story is that's going on, it's not reality. And so if we can start distinguishing between reality and various levels of illusion, then I think that we'll be doing ourselves a lot of good. Um, I was in a restaurant a few years ago, and I was sitting at a table, and there were 4 or 5 people at an adjoining table who were talking loud enough for me to hear them, and these were like 4 or 5 white guys. I would guess in age somewhere between 20 and not quite 30. Um, Kind of pudgy and doughy, not exactly fat, but not the kinds of people you would see exercising. And one of them was saying to another, "I really liked the horse I was on the other day." And they were all like, "Oh yeah, that was a really nice horse." And he was explaining, it had the power I needed, etc. And I was listening because it's like, these guys don't seem like horse riders to me. They don't seem that they've been outside long enough to ride a horse. Um, so I said, yeah, I'm thinking to myself, that's interesting. Um, and one of the other guys, so they talked about the horse for a while, and one of the other guys said, I like what happened when you chopped that guy's head off. And all the other guys go, oh yeah, yeah, his head rolled around the floor, and yeah, um, you got rid of him, etc. And I realized that the horse that they were talking about was a piece of fiction. That the guy who had his head chopped off was a player in a game, and that player didn't lose his head. He just lost some points or whatever. And I realized that I was listening in on a conversation that was a fantasy that had engaged all of their attention, a fantasy that had engaged all of their energy. And I have been paying attention to the numbers of fantasies that seem to occupy our attention. Um, the over at the Lloyd Center, which I'm pointing to right now, um, they have regular meetups of people who are playing various fantasy games, and there are these. I mean, like literally a game universe where there are rules of how you engage each other and what quest you're on, and you can buy magical tools and things like that. And a lot of the people playing these games are adults. Almost, I'd say like 80 to 90% of them male. Um, and and they are as engaged in the game playing as other people are engaged in their lives. But I guess if your life is not that interesting, if your life is not engaging, you will just live out um, in your fantasy world. These fantasy worlds can get so involved that there are conventions. There's books being written about there are fantasy books being written about fantasies. Um, how can I say this? Think of how many books were written about the television show called Star Trek, and following the actors, following the scripts, um, discussion boards around all of this stuff, and what they're all talking about, what the various conventions are all about, is about something that does not exist. This is also what what happens when you go from a board game, or you go from an online video game, and you go into your life and you say, hey, how about if we go to Mars? And everybody says, oh, wow, cool, let's go to Mars. And you start doing things toward getting to Mars. And that is as fantastic a goal and as fantastic a vision as Dungeons and Dragons, or these pudgy guys riding imaginary horses. Now, what seems to make the Martian situation different is that you've got this guy with obscene amounts of money who may be able to fuel his own um, fuel his fantasy. Um, he may be able to convince our leaders to fueling his fantasy. Um, I was watching. I I spend time looking at the YouTube videos that talk about um, the space programs, etc. I'm interested in where they are and how they are. Um, I'm not, as you should know, I'm not a fan of touring out in space until we get our earthly home together. Um, but saying you're going to set up a research station on the moon is a stretch, but it's not a fantasy. It's not something that is impossible to happen. The reason that the Elon Musks of the world give us the space program and colonize Mars, etc. The reason for that is that the practical reason for that is that we have to become the term is multiplanetary species. Now, here on Earth, we don't treat each other as one species right now. There are no major ways of looking at human behavior where we actually say we're one species on one planet. The Musk videos will say, "Is humanity's goal to live in the stars?" Oh my goodness, there should be thrilling music in the background as Musk with a heroic pose will point our way to our future out here, and it's fantasy. Each part of the problem of how do you get from sitting here on Earth to sitting over there on Mars, each part of it you can think about as a step. But when you start adding these steps together, it's like, no, you're not going to do this in any significant way. So this is Cherie's prediction. There will be fewer than 12 people who are actually sent to Mars in our entire lifetime. We're not colonizing Mars. We'll send 12 people, and I'm predicting that we bring none of them back. The problems are insurmountable, and so unless there is a major technological change, like anti-gravity or faster than light travel, the things that again are part of fantasy, it's something that will never happen. But we latch on to these fantasies because we can't align ourselves with vision. And we can't align ourselves with vision because many of us don't accept the what the vision is suggesting to us. When I've talked about what we will be facing in our very near future here, when I talk about the wave and the various things that will happen that are going to dislocate our existing society. One of those many things is going to be questions around energy. There are lots and lots of ways that our energy grid gets taken down. Um, the one common way would be a solar flare and the corresponding coronal mass ejection can hit the Earth in such a way that all electricity goes down in North America and Europe and stays down for 3 months, which means for the United States, it stays down forever. Because if we lost electricity for 3 months, we would consume each other. So my vision is we learn how to generate our own electricity, and we do that on a community level, so that a number of our independent communities can start generating the electricity that we need, not the massive amounts of it that drive industrial corporate America, but the amounts that we need to live our lives. That's a really interesting challenge to me. When I was over in Sri Lanka, I was watching the development of, let's say, community level power plants. I'll tell you a little bit about this, and if you want to know more, you can write to me and say, do a program on community level power plants. But these are plants that run on wood gas. When you have a wood fire going, it's burning away. But the thing that's burning is actually the gas that's held inside the wood. So the wood, the wood electrical generating system burns the wood in such a way that it doesn't produce tons and tons of soot, of carbon, and it collects the carbon it does generate and uses that to water the roots of the very special plants that you use for your wood base. If I remember correctly, it's called Gliricidia. It's a type of wood that grows so fast in the tropics you can watch it grow, which is pretty stunning. And the same tree can be cut over and over and over again, which is very economical. And they grow really fast because instead of putting the carbon in the atmosphere where it doesn't belong, you put it in the wood filtering system for the generator, and it will you water the tree roots with the carbonized water, and the trees grow faster, and you get to cut them down faster, and you have a closed loop cycle for carbon. It's what you get when you actually think out the entire system, as opposed to acting like breakers, fixing one thing that destroys 4 or 5 other things. So these systems that I saw would service, let's say, 5 or 10 let's say European, maybe 20 European style apartments, as opposed to the massive McMansions with all the lights going here in the United States. And you have to work at it. You have to clean the plant. You have to change the water. You've got to not say, oh, that stuff is just handled over there, and I'm just going to sit over here and watch television. you have to get involved in the world that you live in, and you have to get involved in the growing your food, growing your electricity, having safe sanitation systems and things like that. But we shouldn't be separated from that stuff. At some point in time, we have to recognize, yeah, I live on this planet. We've got to do these things. Let's do these things together. Um, so our challenge is, can we accept that we can live on a really, really beautiful planet, the one we've got right now, and we can work in ways that will expand that beauty? And I'm thinking about, the satisfaction that you get when you grow your own food, the satisfaction you get when you when you become a producer, not a consumer, not just a consumer. When you are the one that plants the seed, you are the one that tends the crop, you are the one that that's involved in the harvest, you're the one that's involved in the preparation of the food. There are entire cycles of life that are very satisfying, that can be very satisfying for us, but they can't be satisfying if we're not engaged in life. If all we do, if our relationship with life is watching a nature program on television, we've got a problem. I was in a Middle Eastern country. I want to say Dubai or Bahrain or one of them. And my first time there, and I wanted to have an experience of Middle Eastern culture. And I went to the hotel I was in and talked to the person at the desk and said, what is there to do here that's part of your culture? And this woman kind of lit up and says, we've got 7 malls inside of walking distance, so you can go shopping. And I said, I don't want to go shopping. I want to have an experience of your culture. What are some of the things to do regarding your culture? And it was Bahrain, now that I'm thinking of it. And she looks at me and she says, well, you can stay in your hotel room and watch the culture on television. There are several TV stations that play Middle Eastern music. And I thought that was really, really sad. That one's culture is what one experiences on television. And so our present challenge is, how do we get engaged in our own future? How do we get engaged in envisioning our own future? How do we learn how to produce something that is worth experiencing? How do we produce something that brings joy to ourselves and all others around? I don't think that these are idle questions. I think that these are things that we need to be focused on. And I think that we can focus on it, but we have to focus away from the typical breaker thinking and the breaker consequences of that thinking. I think we have to recognize that our society has been made very, very convenient for us. And that convenience comes at a price. And that price is that we've created a sterile environment. I'll tell you, and I guess I'm dating myself here. When I was a kid growing up in Camden, my brother and I used to enjoy going to. This is back in the days when there were actually meat markets, where if you wanted to buy meat, you would go to the store that had the meat. And for us, it was called the Roxy Market. And the reason we liked like going there is they would literally bring the carcasses of the animals through the front door. So, so you're shopping for your meat, but every once in a while you have to stand aside, and these guys would have these literally carcasses of various animals, beef, pork, chickens came in a different way, and they would carry them through the store, and they would be dripping blood, and they would put sawdust down on the floor to absorb the blood. And my brother, the reason we like going to the store is that my brother and I liked kicking the sawdust around into heaps. And of course, the people in the store didn't like it. I mean, they wanted it spread out evenly to absorb the blood. So they were trying to get us to not do that. And we thought that was the best thing in the world. And it had a smell. And the smell was not pleasant. It was not unpleasant. It was just a smell. And if I could describe it to you, it was like a very earthy smell. The mixture of the blood on the floor. I mean, and when I say they were bleeding, they weren't dripping with blood. I mean, it wasn't like a horror scene or anything, but there were drops of blood that would come out of these carcasses while they were being carried through. And we had an experience of that. So you go to a meat market, you go to Kroger's or Safeway or some way right now, and you don't see any blood and you don't see any carcasses, and everything's wrapped up in plastic and everything is neat and clean and sanitary, and you've missed an entire experience. You don't know the reality of the food that you eat, which is why you can get fed adulterated food all the time. So our challenge is, are we ready to deal with the reality that that we could be facing, but can we do that in such a way that it lifts us up, not worries us in terms of, oh my God, we won't have any electricity, this will be terrible. No, you won't have any electricity, and you get to make your own, and look forward to that. We should be talking about how you do that right now before you have to. We should be talking about the elements of a society right now before you have to. We'll be looking at this on Saturday. This Saturday coming will be our excursion into a couple of hours of what our future holds, a couple of hours of our challenge of our of looking at boldly looking at our future, and looking at our future in such a way that we actually, how do we look at it in such a way that this is a future that we actually want to live in? How do we practice the next society? That'll be our focus, and I look forward to working with you as we um, use Saturday as a kickstart to get us into a whole new way of thinking. Um, I have people all the time saying, Sharif, how do we do work with this? How do we do that? How will we survive these events, etc.? And I've got one answer, and it has not been a satisfying answer for people, but it's the only one we got. The way we get through all of these upheavals is together. There are no individual strategies that will stand the test of time. Mr. Musk, with all of his multiple billions of dollars, will come to that realization. The multiple billions of dollars won't do you any good. What you need are communities of people. And the kind of communities I'm talking about, you can't buy them. You can't rent them. It'll have to be a whole other way for you to be thinking. Okay. So let's, I look forward to seeing seeing you tomorrow, back to the live stream format. As I said, today, we're not going to do an informal conversation because I'm not really here. But tomorrow I'll be here, and we will go into some chat if the technology allows us to do that, and we'll see where we go. Okay, thank you, and look forward to connecting with you tomorrow. May all beings be well, may all beings be secure, and may all beings be happy. See you then.